All right there. Hello there, Outliers. Nyamba Shang here. And thank you so very much for letting us be a part of your journey. Today, we have the opportunity to have an incredible roundtable conversation with Sabrina Runbeck. So let me make sure I'm saying that properly. Sabrina Runbeck. Sabrina, thank you so much for being here. I'm really glad that you're spending the time with us Outliers here today. And I'm really excited to get into you and your leveling up journey as an outlier.
Yes, so appreciated to be in this space. I think all of us have a different path to leveling up, and we always like to be the navigator, also the road builders, and to see how do we level up in our own space. Because if we don't feel comfortable in the path that we choose, then there's really never going to get us to the destination.
That's it. Like you like fully get this, Sabrina. So outliers, you're going to be in for a really good time here. Sabrina, let's make sure outliers get a chance to get to know you. Would you mind sharing more about you and the game you're currently playing?
The game I'm currently playing is being a venture partner for healthcare technology solutions because I am a clinician myself, being in the space of doing heart surgery and lung surgery for the past 10 years. And I got burned out really easily earlier on my career. And I'm seeking the repeatable story happening across all clinicians. We get tapped out on our careers. And once you go to the top of your career ladder, even though you can be the department head, you can be start climbing the ladder into different health systems, payers, and then people start thinking, what does that legacy truly means for all of us? So now I am supporting clinicians to go beyond the bedside to take on advisor roles, consultant roles, executive roles, and be investors. So then we're not feeling constrained by how fast we can create movements, impact in the healthiness of our patients, our communities, our entire world, and internationally, not by the larger VCs or private equity, but by all of us individually can write that $25,000 checks. And that's how we can all come together collaboratively to move things forward that much quicker.
So this is really interesting to me. So like your journey started out as a clinician. Now you're helping people in many different ways here. And what I love about it is the one we have like three main pillars here at Outliers Edge. It's identity, income, and impact. And when I hear you talking here, I'm seeing all those three like interwoven. So it feels like it just feels really good for me to hear that. Like, let me ask you, out of all the things you could have done, why did you choose this?
I had fortunate to have many great people in my life. And I think one of the things that I truly discovered is a tool out of the five, what we call a five-dimensional book that we can create for ourselves, is that we call the book of you, right? So book of Sabrina, book of Naama, book of Lori, book of John. And this book is not so much about when we're thinking about performance and even from the larger McKesson consultant, right? Usually business hire or employee hire, they're going for the default of discs, psychological profiling, Myers-Briggs. But we know that's very one dimension. If you're thinking about impact, self-realization, there's a multiple layer of us. There's the layer of physical self. There's actually nine different activation in our body. When we always say, be in someone else's shoes, but we actually didn't have a tool to do that except, oh, how is that personality? How's their strength? Then we have to consciously think about it. Then it's slower to actually be in other people's shoes. That's too hard. We say, if you understand how people function with their body, put yourself in that energetic movement of the body center. That's how you think, influence, create just like them. And so you can think as you have a group of friends, right? And sometimes you start talking like each other and you add the weird accents from your friends that you don't even have. And then you start thinking about the same topic. That's the way that we can use our physical body to tap. So that's one layer. And then the other one is psychological for sure. My background is in neuroscience before I got into medicine to do cardiac. And back then my study, and then when I start burning out, I start learning more about positive psychology combining neuroscience and cognitive behavior. So we realize there are 10 sabotaging tendencies. But if we just recognizing them faster, one of the big one is judge. We judge ourselves for why do we have not getting there yet? Things should have been faster. If I just do it myself, maybe I don't have to hand it off to my partner or my staff. They're messing things up. We talked about this already. How come nothing is done, right? And then there's a sub layer of that. So we're saying we can actually train our brain to that higher function. But if you just train your brain without knowing your body, then there is a study called emotional code. So your physical pain is actually connected to your emotional pain. So unless you can fix your physical body, knowing what the natural state is, that psychological function of higher brain will not get there. But we say that's not enough just to have a mind body. There's a spiritual world. And what I think, to tie back to what you are asking, that's where I start become more clear on my highest path. So one of my partner have a process called Genosa map. It's mapping on what is our highest purpose, not just any purpose. And then we also know many humans don't have a clear understanding of just purpose, what that means to them. And so when we think about one of the study that got pulled is that only about 30% of people even know what their purpose is. And of those, only 10% know the highest purpose. So I start shifting more in tune into what I must do when I discover my highest purpose. And when you know your highest purpose, that's when you connect your personal value to all the companies that you're helping, their individual value, and all your partners. There is a overlapping of joy and self-motivation and lightness into what you truly do. And when we thinking about it from a business perspective, we also aligned into their vision and mission, not in this hypothetical la la land of what could be, but even break it down as a SMART goal. So when we have numbers, when we're attaching something that could be very tangible in the future, we are able to embody ourselves into those space. So a few years back, I launched my podcast, Provider's Edge, and now
Did you
we're
say Provider's
fortunate.
Edge?
Yeah, so I have
Yeah, yeah,
a podcast
yeah.
called Provider's Edge,
I love
and
I
so
love the
it's
edge.
all
You
about
know me.
right. It's about like how do we bring the edge ourselves as well as the edge for the legacy you're building, right? Whether that is a leading an existing larger organization where you're creating the startup that can create that impactful movement. And that show, fortunate, now we're top 100 under entrepreneurs in the US and UK. But it's also never just got there yesterday, right? It's about consistency. It's about knowing why we even have these important conversations, and especially tied back to my own purpose in seeing clinicians need to be going beyond bedside, not to lose our clinical practice, but to see how much more can we serve in that one-to-many effect, not just waiting for patients to come to our office doing operation with us and then doing the next appointment, but is that when we are tapping into the influential side of technology, then it's millions of lives that we can impact right away. So for me, that type of pivot is that you have to stand out, right? And then that's one of the reasons I did my TED Talk last year,
Mhm.
specifically niching down on the 3% problem. Why women-led innovation is so hard. How come they're not getting the funding as compared to their male counterparts? And I even broke down more into the concept of we're building a castle, right? That legacy, that thing that you're creating is a castle. But there are three major myths that
Before we
we
get to the
have
myth,
created.
before we get to them, I want to get there, but I like you're bringing in a lot of good things in. And I want to make sure that outliers are like capturing this and like and actually taking it in, right? So like you started because like Sabrina, it's really fun. This is what I love about outliers. Like you started out with like how you were a clinician, and now right when we paused here, you're like, and this is what I'm enjoying hearing how you've been able to go on a journey that honestly, as I'm listening to this, I'm like, none of these things really feel like all that like intuitive, right? Like from like go like being a clinician to like bringing together people to coming up with all these different frameworks and ways of thinking about things to help getting people like connect with their higher purpose and then build like infrastructure and organization underneath that to make sure that that was possible. Like I'm hearing all these things come to life, and I want to know more about the castle. I do. But I think the first question the one of the questions that keeps coming to my mind, because I'm thinking about my outliers out here, is especially as we're looking to like jump levels, like you have gone through a number of different, it feels like number of different iterations, and it feels like you've expanded yourself over the years, right? The question I have here is, I'm thinking about one person in particular who asked me, but the question she would say is like, she's like, I'm really concerned that someone's going to be like, who does she think she is to do this? And I would love to get like your take on like any places where like when you were, stretching beyond what people had known you beforehand, when you came out and said, hey, look, we can do this now, or I can have like this vision is able to come to life. I'm really curious about like how you just take us to one time maybe where you ran up against like an edge for yourself around like, hey, this if I step things to this level, like people who have known me wouldn't even recognize me. You mind sharing something about that?
Yeah, I think that aligns perfectly with the first myth that I actually talked about on my TED Talk. The first myth is that mental myth, right? So I call the mental moat. The castle typically have that little river around it, right? But what we are mistaking is we actually created the sabotaging tendency of a mindset for ourselves to say we couldn't. Who am I, right? As you're referring to, is that we have the tendency of if we outstretch, it's uncomfortable, right? Instead of in these little bubble that we have. But right outside the discomfort zone, it is a growth zone. I've been there multiple times, and every single new company that we jump into, there is that space
Take us
of
take us to one, Sabrina.
uh,
Help make that real for
do
us. Take us to like one company because I get it overall, but I'm like I want to feel this with you. I want to like see what it's like to be in that space with you as you're bringing out myth one or such. So you mind like bringing out like an example of one company or a recent time this happened?
Yeah. So every time we create a new company, that means it's a new idea, right? Or you have to prove to people, even it's the same idea, you done it better. So at that time, you're always going to question. Like for us, a lot of time is people will come to me. It's like, hey, Sabrina, you're the strategist. We are great at our investor relations, and then we have a lot of startups, and you guys been building infrastructure. Can you help us? Now, at any moment we can tell ourselves, well, I have investor relationship, but I haven't created those funds and being a fund manager, and that's just not what I know, right? So at that moment it's always like, can I do this? But then immediately one of my personal gift is that I can figure out. Now this I can figure out thing is that there's plenty of book, plenty of mentors I have. Clearly, people who came to me, they are the experts, but they understand they're the expert in their own domain. They're not the expert in the domain that I have. I simply have to step into my skill set, my truths, and my expertise to support them where they are. And so whenever I question that, it's also questioning, I think, one of my the 10 saboteurs that we
Mhm.
talked about, right? The sabotaging tendency. One of mine that's really high is a high achiever tendency.
Mhm.
So high achiever tendency means you have to have all the titles, all the letters behind your name, all the publishings, right? And then and all the proof point before you feel like someone would recognize you. And then you can add culture too. Female, Asian, I'm barely 5'2", right? But there's also a different presence that when I'm there, I'm speaking, I'm in the room, I'm engaging, people feel a
Can I
different
just
thing.
point that real quick
And
right there? Like your
go
presence
ahead.
right now just shifted. I felt that shift right there when you started talking about it, right? Because like I can tell like you're really intelligent. I could hear like the strategist came in and then like you drop down a bit. You're like there's also a different like you're like so much shifted right there, and I wanted to make sure that I capture that like in real time because people can talk about it, but like you actually demonstrated it in the real time. I know I just broke your train of thought, but it felt really important to like just like to like showcase this. It's like this is what we're talking about. Like she dropped in and really brought that presence. Like continue if you can. I'm sorry for interrupted. I was just like, but this right here, this is what the game is
No.
actually is.
Yeah, so I was going to say that when I was a few years back when I'm still practicing medicine full time, um, my patients are elderly. They're thinking about heart surgery. Most people are 50 beyond, right? Mostly it's in their 60s, 70s, and 80s because we deal with coronary disease, aneurysms, and valvular disease. Those are older population. So I have people that I'm there doing their preoperative checkups or getting them prepared, going to a consultation with them. And they will be asking me, oh, when are you graduating? And then I'm like, yeah, I've been practicing for many years. But then I just keep talking. And then the more I talk, even some of my students with me, they're like, oh, yeah, when you start talking, they're just glued to you because is that you don't have to stop yourself for a misjudge of age, gender, or whatever outside appearance. You have to just simply step in and carry on. And when we do carry on, that's the shift people also see. And that's the trust that immediately gravitate. So I think those are some of the moments that despite of how much we think, whether it's in real life in clinical medicine because it's the culture of, oh, there's the residents, there's students, right? Maybe the person seeing me not really my true clinician who's consulting on my case, they're just someone else coming in first gathering information, but we step right into that. And same thing in business, a lot of time we're gonna have people who really they're doubting themselves on how to do, but then they will flip on you because their
Mm,
trust is really lack of trust in
mm,
themselves. So they will say, well, but how do you know my specific niche? My deep tech is very different. I'm in this special architect, blah blah blah, architecture. I'm the microbiology. I'm the best in this. Do you really know me, right? So they will flip the coin on you instead of actually there is a systematic way to do everything. And when people don't know that, they're so in their bubble of what they know, they will never have the pair of eyes to see what their gaps are. And that's what we do so well is we love what I call being that PET scanner, right? You kind of have to go into the PET scan to do a top down so we know what lights up, what shouldn't be doing, and what you do really well. So for a lot of us, we have to first trust ourselves and trust that the people that were building this, whether that's a company, infrastructure, whatnot, is there to stay. And when you don't really know their true alignment in capacity, capability, timeline, are they even sitting in the right seat with the right people? Or maybe they are the wrong people in the right seat, right? So being able to have that mentioned earlier, that five-dimensional evaluation is not truly to evaluate people. It's actually about understanding, about amplification. It's about pushing, like you're saying, right? Up leveling and pushing you into the next level that perhaps some of us didn't even know we can.
so this is this is as I'm hearing it, there's a lot of resonance. There's a lot of resonance here. One from the element of how you look at yourself and seeing solutions that aren't there. You know, as you were talking here, and Outliers, I'm going to ask you to think for yourself here. Like where right now. You talked about being in a bubble, you know, and not being able to see like the gaps outside of it. One of the things I think is hard sometimes is to recognize like what your bubble is, right? To raise the awareness on that. So Outliers, I'm going to give you a chance to like take some time right now, and if you had to like describe your life, your business, the things that you're doing right now, what's the bubble that you have? Like, just to make that real, Sabrina, as you're talking, I realize that for myself, I have put myself in a place where like I predominantly bring people into my world. Right. I'm like, come into my live, come onto the podcast, so on and so forth. But I haven't gone out into other people's worlds in a while. I haven't gone to other like to see, okay, what are they asking of me? I know what I ask of other people. What are they asking of me? And so as you were saying this, I was wondering, I was asking myself the question, what bubble right now am I living in? You know, and then like what would it look like to either pop it all together, or you know how if you walk, like, you have a soap bubble, if you just get your hands wet, you can put your finger in and it doesn't have to pop, so like you can permeate through to get to some new place here. I'm gonna ask you another question in a bit, but I want to see if there's anything that comes to your mind or your heart when I bring this in.
Yeah, so I think the bubble concept is also very reflective. I love that you give people a moment, a pause. For us, is we want to build a bubble because it's safe, and for us, we have a organization called Health Board
Mhm.
Advisor. That's where we bring in the clinician, the people with more than 10 years expertise, investors in, because you wanted to hold that eliteness of what these people are, and they are already the driver co-creator. So when you wanted to build something, you have a deal flow, things just happen so much faster. Now, then we wanted to think what's outside the bubble, because there are so many different organization networking events. So then people can be thinking in the opposite way. Well, maybe I'm too drowned into too many different places. Where am I focusing on? So that's where we start seeing, am I too much in my own bubble, or I'm diffusing myself and pulling myself into too many places. So that there is a happy median. And I still go back to our value question and purpose question is, do you understand what is that highest purpose and value that you have? And how are all these organization people you're meeting are help to promote you? So for us, a house board advisor is all about getting people on podcast, press release, article publication, and helping them to truly be that thought leader, right? And thought leadership is part about speaking. Most people don't even understand what a true keynote topic is. They just have been speaking everywhere as a panelist, or they being invited as a medical expert. But that's very different from a thought leadership, a public persona of speaking. And how do we want other people to ask us questions that actually lead into the best benefit and reputation of us, instead of just free flowing? Which, like for someone like me who's been podcasting, speaking everywhere, I can do that. But if people kind of get caught, they have to be like, pause, thinking
Yeah.
about it, then it doesn't sound as professional as some other people who are more prepped. So we are really about like, how do you stand out no matter which ecosystem you join, but also help you to think about there are certain ecosystems that are primary, secondary, and maybe the other ones that are not giving you as much of a ROI, that you can slowly back out and don't feel bad about it.
I love this. So this is something that shows up for me as you're talking about this. One, I heard an element of understanding the various ecosystem, like seeing the system for what it is. So your ability, you're able to help people be able to say, like, hey, look, this is the domain in which you're playing in. One, two, you're able to help them like create strategies and like actually practice, like getting better at navigating that system, so that it feels to me like rather than being in there and getting the low leverage, getting low leverage for the same amount of time, same amount of money, same amount of like effort, you could be in this higher leverage, higher like leverage vehicle for you, and get even further from this. And then I'm also hearing a level of leadership that comes along the way, which is like leading people into, hey, this is how I like to be, like how I like the interactions to go. This is what being present with me is, and leading with them in a way that allows for. Yeah, to me, the real thing comes down to like the highest leverage of your time and effort, at that space. Am I getting you right, Sabrina? Am I simplifying it too much?
No, it's correct because if you think about it, we also have multiple different workshops, impact award, things like that. Not everyone should be jumping into every single opportunity. We always say, think about which is your primary hat, right? If your primary hat is I'm a healthcare innovation company, I need my domain expertise, then okay, great. Apply to Health Tech Impact Award, because then every year we put on these major collaboration with other press, other media, because we want to recognize the people who truly are domain expert. And through that, they are really learning about themselves, speaking, connecting with the investors and whatnot. So then there is a focus, right? But then most of these pitch competition awards are just once a year, right? So then the rest of the year, then you can think about, okay, what else? Well, we have ongoing virtual events for getting your pitch right. How do you talk? How do you actually create social selling messages, right? Knowing where you're at, because before your company hit 3 million, the three major things you have to do is have amazing operational system, have amazing marketing, which is your branding, your messaging, and having amazing sales, right? That follow up system. How do you get to the right people and not just feeling like, oh my God, I have to educate the world about who I am before they even recognize me? You need to go to where people are who already appreciate you, already need what you're offering, and making sure your offer is something they must have and have to have now, and not just solving a annoying problem, right? So knowing where you sit versus the experts. Well, the experts, if you're investor expert, we have investor only events. If you're a want to become advisor, or you are already advisor, want to have potentially more company come to your way, then we have mastermind with those group, right? So knowing where you fit become very important, and knowing these opportunity is not just let's go to as many as possible, but we always think about is planning your timetable at least 2 to 3 months ahead of time, right? Looking at all these conferences, virtual and online events, how do you have something that you can stretch but doesn't feel like you're constrained, right? If we have too many things happening, then there's no room to grow because there's no space to
So
scale
this
up.
is actually really interesting because like there feels like there's a tension, right? And you're describing something that's really that like honestly, I'm just really curious about myself. Like I tend to be someone that's like more is more. Like if people like less is more, I'm like, but how? They're different letters. They're like it's like just the definition is more. Like I don't know how right? But there is a counterintuitive truth to that as well. I understand. I see that, right? So I'm really curious, like for like there's a number of different ways that you support people. How are you like able to I think the two things in my mind is like how do you keep it so that things are clear for your clients so that they don't like basically how do you manage overwhelm or like keep them from getting into overwhelm slash on the other side feeling that they're not able to or like take advantage of everything because you have so much that's there. And so I think there's something about it that you figured out in terms of like how do you make this process easeful or something. I don't want to say I don't put too many words in your mouth. So I'm curious about like how you balance that.
Yes. So just a personal perspective, a lot of my partners like, "Do you ever
Mhm,
sleep?" And because I can crank up so much stuff in a short amount of
mhm,
time, but that's the less is more concept is that I block out my Tuesdays that I typically don't have client calls or partner calls at all. That's my concentrated day. And then I don't like to, and then we do a thing. For me, I'm a midday person, right? So you can calculate your chronological time. So to understand where's your most concentrated peak performance hours. So for me, I don't take calls before 9 o'clock, mostly 10 o'clock, because I'm not a morning person. I wanted to get myself up, get things situated, and then I can go on pretty long. And I have these set of black hours that when we have infrastructure, for example, today I'm back to back with interviews, right? Podcasting, speaking, engagement. There's certain days for that. And then there are certain days for just client call, client call, client call. So then my assistant will go in there after every client call, since we all use
mhm.
AI note takers, summarize those, put it into an email draft for me to review, and boom, send for follow up. There's a process and tools that we use for everything. Now, from a client side, I think a lot of time people are like, well, but I have too many options, right? Like I just went through this incubator, this accelerator. I'm like, yeah, because they try to fit you in a mode that they built for you. We try to take the other way to say, let's take a look at what exactly you have going on. Who are the human resources, all your leadership, all the people who's a title member versus the doers, right? Are they just there to support you, bounce ideas off, but they're not actually going to do the core of the work? Or are you the only person? And then we can look at the tools, infrastructure that you have built, what SOPs is even there or lack thereof. How are you then taking people through the customer journey of acquiring more business, and who in each step is helping you, whether it's from automation or human a virtual system where it's all by yourself. So we start looking in the other way to help people become less overwhelmed, even though they might be a solopreneur that has other board members just simply bounce off idea. Is that we don't look at as you have too many options. It's that some of these options need to be used later on. Not necessarily the wrong approach. They're just not for you right now. So we can start peel away things that people shouldn't pay attention to and give them a clear roadmap. As I mentioned, the three major core is human capital, social capital, and operational capital, right? So when we're really clear on how these are all interconnected with each other, then you don't have to question yourself anymore, right? Like the very first thing you even mentioned, we question ourselves, have we done this? Is this good enough? Can I do this, right? We don't need to question that anymore because we look at it, we already know what we can and cannot do. And we create the roadmap based on our capability. Instead of most people will hire consultants or partners, they start going directly into how do we do this? But that's not helpful, right? How do we do this? It's based on who you are. Do you have the resource to even do something, right? If we're not building strategy based on the capacity that you have, then you can plan all day long. No one's gonna do it. No one's gonna do the execution because then they're gonna say, "Oh, I don't have money to do it. I don't have resources to do it. I'm already doing too much. I'm never gonna get there," right? So it's really flip the table to say, let's be human centered first. Let's be leadership centered first, and then creating the strategy that you can actually do it now based on the limited people that people like to call themselves lean, right? I'm like, okay, stay lean. And then even you stay lean, what can you do now? Okay, that makes sense. But then we do have this critical point that you do need to execute, but you really don't have the resource. We do have to find a solution, right? And that means hire the vendors, plug in someone who can do it, and maybe it's even fundraising at that point.
There's Serena. I'm having a really great time in this conversation because I see how fully you take people through, and like if you're really paying attention, here Outliers, like it's comprehensive, right? It's comprehensive, but there's also this element of like what do you need for you right now? And what I get about you, Sabrina, is that you can almost like you have like the whole world like in your head, like you can see all the whole map, right? But the real thing becomes like, okay, given that this is what it looks like, when is the right time to go and utilize each of them? And then given that you are utilizing it, which one are you going to? Like, how do we make the most from it? I really appreciate this. We're coming up at the top of our time here today, and I want to give some time and space for some things here. So, firstly, Sabrina, for any outlier that's listening, that's like she gets it. I want to go further into her world. What's the best way for people to go deeper down the journey with you?
Yeah, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active. I actually manage the inbox myself. And for people who are more in a healthcare side, we do have open application free to nominate your company for our Health Tech Impact Award. So just go to Health Tech Impact Award singular.com and to enter your application. And for all of us, we truly believe in collaboration. Means it's never really just myself going into seeing the gaps that you have. It's actually we bring on the whole team, a whole diversified advisors, experts who are able to see things in a different perspective. I think that's part of the leveling up is be honest with yourself, be able to peel away these different areas, because as anybody, right? We're never going to be the best of everything, but we can stay in our truth, our best, and leverage other people's resources to go much
I
faster.
love it. I love it. Well, Outliers, like let's go spend that time in here. My ask you, Outliers, is that you take the time and let someone know about this conversation. Like there's someone out there who would really benefit from what Sabrina and I were talking about today. And my ask is that you take some time to share this message directly with them. We call it the One Person, One Conversation at a Time initiative. And it helps us live beyond this moment in many different ways so that I want years from now someone to be like this was the message that I needed, and it's still passing on to them. All right. So one person, one conversation at a time. If you can take some time to share that, please go ahead and do that. And Sabrina, we're gonna wrap up our conversation here with uh, focused on you. And so right now, let's put outliers out to the side. They know how to get in touch with you. They've been able to have their thinking messed with, and you brought in some different things to help them level up. I'm curious for you. Uh, what was one of the insights that you are leaving this conversation with, if any?
I think the insight always to be is number one is be okay to say I have to take time to understand what I need most, what is truly my value, my system, what it means for me to do the best. I think in the world of currently, even from all of our assessment, what do we know about human beings, we tend to not ask that question. And really, 1 out of 9 type of people are okay asking themselves the question is this going to be good for me, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's okay to ask that question, ask all of ourselves, because if it's good for me, it's good for the world, and then let's do it together.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here, Serena. Outliers, I like. We're going to end this conversation here. We'll see you over in the Outliers Edge community as well if you want to continue on having the conversation and beyond. Until then, know this that we believe in you and we ask you to just be you on purpose.